Alright YouTube, we're here on episode 6 for the Nemesis Scrambler build. We've knocked off a lot of fabrication in our previous episodes, but we've still got a long way to go before this thing's ready for teardown and paint. Today we're going to be going through mounting the baggage rack. We're going to use the stock rack and modify it to suit our new tail. We're also going to be sketching out a little design on the tank so I can look at it as I'm working on it, figure out if it's going to work or not. Then we're going to go through mounting some dirt pegs and potentially making a battery box as well if we get time. This sort of stuff, it always creeps up on you towards the end of a job and you'll have a massive list of little things to get through. But we're going to try and do our best to show you just how to make it work properly. So we're going to dive in on making the baggage rack first. So with modification on the stock bag rack, I've cut the old mounting legs off. We've obviously had to shorten it up because the subframe's a lot tighter now. So I've mounted from my back point where my brake light mounts. This will be slotted so when you want to take it off, you loosen your shock bolts, you loosen the brake bolt, and then just slide it upwards. So what I've got to do now that I've got that fixed at my sort of one static point, I've got to mount these and then link them up with a couple of bits of tube. It's I guess it's not an exact science with these things, you just got to figure it out. Like for instance, this wasn't square to start with, so I've had to like bend it a little bit, so we just got to work with what we've got here. So I've just put the final tack downs on the Nemesis bag rack. I just thought it'd be important to mention that with this sort of stuff, I always make sure I have a few more tacks than what I need. I've had in the past, you build it on the bike, rip it off, finish weld it, and the steel will pull and tube will sort of distort as you're welding it, and then you'll go to fit it up and it's not going to sit on there right. So more tacks than what you need, so you make sure that when you're welding it properly, it's not going to move anywhere. I'm going to dive in and TIG it up, then we'll fit it up to the bike. So I'm just about to fit up the first side of these off-road pegs that we got for the Nemesis. I've gone ahead and modified this one already and then also added a bit of strength to the foot peg bracket. I've found out on a lot of bikes that I've built that the peg mounts and universal rear sets that you sometimes buy, they're not made to stand on, they're meant to rest under the weight of your foot. So what I've done is strengthen this so it can definitely take a person's weight. It might have been able to do it already, but I'd rather fix it now and be sure rather than find out when we're out on the road. So I'll slap this one on and then I'll take you through in more detail what I'm going to do on the other side. So I bought these MX pegs online. They're a universal fit, but as universal fit things go, it didn't fit. So it doesn't really matter if you've got a welder and a grinder, you can make anything work. I've cut out a bit of 12mm flat bar and then I've got to modify this to suit the foot peg arrangement. So this will be the key that comes from the foot peg bracket out, and then I'll drill a hole, and then I'm also going to strengthen this up. So first things first, I'll clean this up, drill a hole in that, and then I'll fix it on, and then we can move ahead with strengthening the peg bracket and making it all work. So with the new mounting stud welded on there now, I can start to fit up and make sure that the peg is situated correctly. Before it goes back on the bike though, what I'm going to do is strengthen the mount points from where your foot actually sits back to where the bolts are. So at the moment it is braced, but the weld is only on one side and the gap is quite a bit, and you do get a bit of flex when you're feeling, when you're putting a bit of weight on the peg. So what I'm going to do is take a bit of round bar and just link from where your foot sits, where the weight is, back to this point. So it sits like that on the bike. I'm going to sort of triangulate that for a bit more strength to the back of where the peg is. So foot peg's done and mounted now. All I've got to do is just round the pin slightly, so this will, when it's laid over, fold up. At the moment it doesn't fold, it's just square. But a quick job, easy to do, and adds a bit of peace of mind for being able to stand on these pegs and not worrying about them bending or flexing. So I'm going to move on to now probably sketching out a little bit of detail on the tank. Just finished up mounting the key ignition underneath the seat here. When I was building the front end, putting the lights in and doing the speedo, we ran out of room pretty quick. I didn't want to shoehorn it in there and force it, so throwing it under here keeps it nice and clean across the bars, and it'll also save me running too many wires back and forth from the front of the bike, which is always a good thing. I've also taken a minute just to sketch up on the tank here a design that I'm thinking about throwing on there when it comes to paint. The tank itself is going to stay bare metal, but I like to throw a few ideas around and see if they stick. So this will stay like that for a couple of weeks while the bike's around the shop. I'll be able to sort of like just look at it in passing, and soon enough I'll figure out whether I want to keep it, change it, or just get rid of it completely. Generally on these bikes, whether I'm building a cafe racer, I'll have room in the tail. Scramblers, sometimes you can chuck them under the seat if you're using a kickstart only bike and a very small battery. Or there's normally a lot of room underneath the swing arm here, but because we're building an adventure bike, I don't want to have anything sort of underneath in case things get flicked up or we're going over rocks. So I'm going to mount this thing up next to the carburetor here. Anti-gravity batteries I've used for a long time. They're a really good product. Super small, but they pack a good punch. So this one's oversized for this motor, but I figured I'd rather go over if we're going to be charging phones and GPS sort of stuff on the trip. So this thing is going to be mounted in here. I'm going to fabricate an aluminium box and then mount it to the outside of the frame. With a bit of luck, it won't look too nasty. I'd like to leave it empty, but you got to do what you got to do. So I'm going to get into patterning it, and then we'll move on and weld it up. So when I was modifying these foot peg clamps, I noticed that now that the exhaust has been moved high on the other side, the stand's stuck way out back here and floating in the middle of nowhere. So I've cut the stand mount off, and what I'm going to do is move it forward on the frame, so when it's tied up, it'll be folded up underneath the foot peg there, out of the way nice and neat. So I've modified this already. I'm going to finish back this frame and fix it on, and then we'll make it operate by welding the spring pin back on. So I got the little aluminium battery box folded up, ends welded in, fitting the anti-gravity battery. So we'll have a little latch across the top here to hold it in place, but I'm going to work on mounting it. So what I want to do is sort of have that tucked in nice and tight there, and we'll probably bring this out, weld an edge along the side of the box, and then bring this out to fix into the front of the frame here. It's sort of like pretty industrial looking, but I think if we do it right, put some nice shape on it, it'll look pretty good. So I just finished fabricating the little aluminium battery box. I went ahead and put some holes in the frame here, and I've welded in some stainless steel threaded slugs. These PBM slugs are a thing that I've just recently come out with. I started wasting a lot of time on my lathe, turning down stainless and threading it for sissy bars, fender brackets. So I've put these out. I made a heap of them, and then you can get them from the online store. Saves me a heap of time during fabrication with making just about anything I'm doing. So I've welded a set of those in there, and then this will fix onto the frame like that. I've got to shape this up and sort of dress it down a little bit, make it look a bit nicer, but that's pretty much the idea. I've also got to add a little rubber battery strap over the front. I'm going to move on to the frame modification to put the stand back on, and then we'll do the backplate now. So I've finished now shaping the aluminium backplate to go under the Nemesis Scrambler. I've just roughed it out, and now I've gone ahead and marked out a pattern that I'm going to drill some speed holes in. Page 47, section 6, and the Bike Builder's Handbook states that drilling holes in stuff is sick. So I'm going to go ahead and do it for a bunch of airflow and extra speed, and then we'll slap it on the bike, and I'll show you how I fix the mounts on it too. So just finishing bolting this up. I went ahead and drilled my speed holes through there, so it's looking pretty nice now. Finished it back with an orbital sander. Doing the mounts, I put a few threads, so I put one up the front, 2 through the center here, and then I did 2 at the back. I was talking to a guy that's building an adventure bike recently out of like an actual adventure bike, and he was telling me you don't want to make the mounts too strong on a bash plate. His reason was that if you sort of hit something, it goes underneath and ends up grabbing a bolt, you want the bolt to snap or the mount to pull out before it damages your frame. So what I've used is a set of nut certs that will, if in the event of something hitting them, worst case I need to remount it, I drill the nut cert out, pop a new one in, and a 6mm bolt will go straight in. There's no welding involved or anything like that, so it's something that can be easily fixed on the run. That'll wrap it up on episode 6 for the Nemesis Scrambler build. We've all but finished fabrication now with a few tiny little bits and pieces to go before we can tear this thing down for paint. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to see the rest of the episodes.